Welcome inside this edition of 101 Sports. Javik Blake alongside Grayhouse and Gray. Today we'll be breaking down the happiest day of the year in opening day,
FIFA World Cup Qualifiers,
and the top quarterbacks across the NFL draft boards. And it all starts right now.
Welcome to another edition of 101 Sports. Let's get things started with the quick hitters. And Javik, 17-game NFL season now, full stadiums, international games. Tell me about it.
So the NFL has expanded to a 17-game regular season. They are stating that all stadiums are going to be opening up to 100% capacity. They have no authority over that. That's just the NFL hoping that every state allows them to come the fall. And the third thing is they want every team to play an international game within the next 8 years, which means the Green Bay Packers, for the first time in their franchise history, will be playing a non-traditional home or away game. But the big thing with the NFL is the 17-game regular season. The question is why? And the question, as with anything of Thursday Night Football, an outdoor draft, games in Mexico, games in London, the NFL wants more money. And another game week means they can charge so much money to TV contracts and providers for another game. And that's all it is. There's no care about player safety. There's no care about making the product better. There is no care in the world. They just want more money because the NFL at the end of the day is a money-making machine. The more games they add, the more money they're going to make. And the question is, does it really make the NFL product better? Does it really make the product better to have guys banged up for the 17th game of the regular season when half the playoff seeds are already figured out and everyone's sitting on the bench? Does it really make it better? The answer is probably going to be no, but the NFL doesn't care because they got a whole lot of this.
I mean, the NFL just, if you want to talk about a cash cow, the NFL is a cash cow. I mean, 17-game regular season. We're starting September 9th. You want full fan capacity, which, I mean, we've got vaccines, but we're nowhere near where we want to be. But, I mean, just the NFL. I mean, Roger Goodell, he can be hopeful, but this is just a giant money grab for the NFL. I mean, the NFL just, I'm not a fan of 17. Regular against, I think 16 on some extent is a little much as well. But I mean, what are you going to do? It's the National Football League. They own a day of the week. So I mean, what can you do?
And 17 is just a weird number as well. But the other thing, moving to college basketball, the big news on Thursday morning, that was not an April Fool's joke, though many UNC fans looked at Twitter and had their fingers crossed and prayed to God that it was an April Fool's Day joke. Roy Williams is retiring after 33 years as a head coach. Was a head coach at UNC since 2003, 485 wins, and a Hall of Fame inductee in 2007. One half of the Tobacco Road rivalry, Gray, is gone.
I mean, one half, and I mean, that just begs the question, when Mike Krzyzewski will retire. But today is Roy Williams Day. I mean, 33 years as a head coach, 18 at UNC, 15 at Kansas. He spent 10 years on the sidelines with Dean Smith. He was a Dean Smith disciple. And I mean, this is really the end of the road for Roy Williams. I mean, we had suspected this with some, health issues coming up within the recent years. He had collapsed a few times on the sidelines. I think had a stint with vertigo. And I mean, he wasn't able to keep up with the Joneses in the ACC anymore. I'm not saying that's why he retired, but I mean, Roy Williams has not been able to adapt to the one-and-done system. If you look at the championship that he won in 2017, it was with veteran players. It was with Justin Jackson. It was with players like Kennedy Meeks, like a Joel Berry, who were all veteran players, and he has not been able to adapt to the one-and-done system. He was an 8 seed this year, and the previous year he finished dead last in the ACC. But this also begs the question, who's going to replace him? And my money is on the man over at UNCG, Wes Miller.
That'll be interesting to see. The biggest thing is Roy Williams retiring. You brought it up. When is Mike Krzyzewski going to retire? Because we always thought they were going to go out at just about the same time, and maybe Roy Williams would stay a year longer just to spite Mike Krzyzewski because that's the rivalry that these two schools have. So him retiring on Thursday is such a huge thing and such a huge blow to ACC basketball. He's such a huge name all over college basketball. But you know what, Grant? You know what is one video that will never die, never retire?
Is it
video Roy Williams walking into the locker room, dancing all over the place? Is one video that is one of the highlights of his career and something that we will never forget.
A meme that will live in infamy.
Live in infamy. Moving over to the Final Four, UCLA, Bill Walton's love chat has made it to the Final Four. we're pretty much looking at a Gonzaga-Baylor crash course for the national title. But UCLA in as an 11 seed, and with all the craziness that's happened without college basketball this year, it's 2 1s, a 2, and an 11 in the men's Final Four.
I mean, specifically, if you look at UCLA, it's the 5th 11 seed to ever make the Final Four. And I mean, we had it 2 years ago with Loyola Chicago, who could have made a run had they not fallen to the Oregon State Beavers, another Pac-12 school. Because again, Bill Walton, 5 Pac-12 schools in the Final Four. I mean, come on, man. But
he was almost right.
I mean, he was almost right, but I mean, yeah, it's definitely looking like a Baylor final to go along with Gonzaga. Gonzaga going for the first undefeated full season since 1976 when the IU Hoosiers did it. Kentucky got close, but of course the infamous 38-1 season with NBA players like Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker. But some scandal right now in the women's tournament with their Final Four coming up as well. You got UConn, South Carolina, Arizona, and Stanford. And one of those teams is not the Baylor Bears. Baylor coach Kim Mulkey saying that the NCAA should just, lay off the COVID testing for the Final Four. Javik, fill me in here.
What are you doing? You don't work for the CDC. You're not a doctor. You're a basketball coach. Don't tell the NCAA whether or not they should test athletes. The NCAA will tell you whether or not they're testing their athletes. Get over it. I don't have enough bad things to say about how she handles this situation. Your team lost. First off, get over it on a foul call that they all want that wasn't a foul, that wasn't called. Maybe you should have drawn up a better offensive play than shooting a layup outside the lane into a double team. Maybe you should have been better.
I mean, again, we're going to roll the clip. It was not a foul. You don't call that late in the situation. But we got a great episode for you guys today. We got NFL, FIFA World Cup qualifiers, and as always, MLB opening day, your favorite time of year. We'll be right back here with more on 101 Sports. With the FIFA World Cup less than just a year and a half away, World Cup qualifications have begun across the globe. And here to discuss it, Gray Ost alongside Will Carroll. First of all, Will, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well. How are you doing, Gray?
I'm doing fantastic. You know who's not doing fantastic, though?
Who?
The nation of Germany, after falling 2-1 to North Macedonia. I mean, what can we say about Germany? Their 2014 World Cup squad is slowly evaporating. No more real Thomas Muller. Manuel Neuer's losing a step. I mean, what can you say just about Germany just laying an absolute egg to North Macedonia?
It's their first loss in the qualifying round in 19 years, something like that. North Macedonia, not a great team, obviously, against a former European powerhouse. Germany, even with their backups, they should be beating North Macedonia. And I'm surprised that they did lose, especially when they scored a goal. If they were shut out, it's one thing, but they put up a goal and they still lit up 2.
I mean, if you're just looking at Group J standings right now, you're looking at Armenia in first and North Macedonia in second, and then the European giants, Germany. But I mean, Germany, they just haven't really been able to get anything going. I mean, we've seen it at Chelsea specifically as well with the buying of Timo Werner and the buying of Kai Havertz. Both of those players in the German squad just couldn't really get anything going. And they really need to step it up if they look to go far in Qatar. Do you think Germany can go far in Qatar?
It'll be interesting to see, because as we saw in the past 3-4 World Cups, former champions haven't fared well. We saw it in Italy after winning in 2006. They struggled in 2010. Spain in 2014. I don't know how Germany will be. They didn't make it out of the group stage, or they didn't go very far out of the group stage in 2018. I don't see them doing particularly well. I think they'll be good enough to make it past the group stage, but I don't think they'll make it to the semis or anything. Maybe even the quarterfinals, I don't think they'll make.
And not only did they not finish well in 2018, they finished dead last in their group, falling behind Sweden, Mexico, and South Korea to finish with only 1 point in the 2018 World Cup. But a team that's really been on fire ever since that World Cup, since losing in the 2016 Euro final, is France. And I mean, France, what else can you say? Just that attacking front with Griezmann and Mbappe really just blowing through these qualifiers right now.
Oh yeah, Mbappe, he's just too fast. As we see in the videos, he's just incredibly fast. He can run past any defender. Griezmann's really good at setting him up, as well as, Dembele, he's really good at finishing as well. And although they don't have the forward anymore, number 9, I still think they'll be really good. Pogba is a good enough midfielder. He can help out on defense, win some headers. I still think they'll be a strong contender. I don't know if they'll make it to the championship. I still think they're the favorites, but I don't think they'll get bounced in the group stage.
And so looking at a team like England. They got to the World Cup semifinals, and, everybody in England and pretty much here in the USA was screaming, it's coming home, it's coming, football's coming home. Is it going to come home for England? Because, if you look at their midfield right now, captained by West Ham's own Declan Rice, they're really just, bouncing off, and England's looking really good right now.
Yeah, I think they'll be solid. I don't know, though. They always choke it. Whenever they look good, they never can put it together and bring it home. I think they'll be solid. I think they'll make it to the quarters, if not the semis again. I don't think they'll win, though. I do think, however, Denmark could be a sleeper team and potentially bring it home. Maybe not in the finals, maybe the quarters or semis, but I think they'll go farther than Germany especially, and potentially England.
What do you see in Denmark? Because, we've seen stars like Christian Eriksen get old, leave Tottenham. They have that staple in goal in Kasper Schmeichel, who's still doing work at Leicester. What do you see out of Denmark?
I see a young team with a lot of potential. Andreas Olsen, he's only 21. He's on Barcelona. He scored twice against Austria. He's looking really good. In general, their team is just young. Christian Eriksen, although he's older, he hasn't scored yet, but he's a good playmaker for the team. And in general, they just have a couple veterans and a couple really good young pieces.
And specifically, if you look at what they've done so far in this group stage, 3 wins, 14 goals, and none conceded for Denmark. So, again, pretty easy group with the likes of, Moldova, the Faroe Islands, Scotland, Israel, Austria. Pretty favorable group for Denmark. But a team that I'm really interested to see is Spain. Spain, not the best showing at the 2018 World Cup, haven't had that same performance since they won it in 2010. Do you think Spain's time is now, or do you think they're just too young?
I think they're still too young. Although they still have Ramos, a good veteran, I don't think they're going to put it together. I think they'll make it out of the group stage again, but they're too inexperienced. They could be good in 2026, but I think they're waiting on the development of Pedri, who's only 18. He could be really good. And then De Gea just hasn't looked the same since the 2018 World Cup after Russia won in pens and they scored all 5, which normally doesn't happen against De Gea. He's a solid goalie, but he was just dominant before that, and he's just not the same anymore.
Specifically, if you look at Spain's midfield, you got players like Fernan Torres, Gerard Moreno, like Rodri at Man City. And if you just look at Spain, I think that their time's going to be in 2026. I think they're still just a bit too young, like the same with the American team. I think 2022 is going to be a good transition year, get some experience. But I think Spain, they're not this World Cup, but the World Cup in USA, Mexico, and Canada in 2026 could be a place where they really make some damage. And speaking of the United States men's national team, the 3rd straight Olympics will feature no United States. Will, your thoughts?
Disappointed more than anything. I understand that USA isn't really known for their soccer program, but I would have thought they could have qualified. And for some reason, they had their U23 team playing against Honduras, who beat us two times in a row, I believe. And we just had our actual team playing against Northern Ireland, who we beat, but we should have been able to beat Honduras. And although the future looks bright, I'm not too sold on if 2022 will be the year, like you said.
And specifically, if you look at players who performed very well in the international friendlies, you got Serginho Dest, you have Gio Reyna, Christian Pulisic, the captain now, and they've really gone toward this new youth movement. Yeah. Who do you see out of the U.S. that could really be that hallmark and make a name in 2022?
It's got to be Pulisic. He's a solid piece. He played really well when he was on Dortmund, and I think he could be the future, the head of the USA national team, and hopefully inspire more kids to pick up soccer or continue playing soccer to lead the team. Maybe not to a championship anytime soon, but a couple solid runs in 2026, 2030, and so on.
Well, that'll do it here from the pitch. We'll be right back with more from the NFL gridiron as we look at the top 5 quarterback prospects. Will, thank you for joining 101 Sports.
Thank you for having me, Gray.
With the NFL draft being less than a month away, San Francisco has made a blockbuster trade to get into the top 3, trading for the 3rd pick with the Miami Dolphins, who moved down to 6. And so joining us now, NFL analyst Max Kreider. And first of all, Max, San Francisco just throwing caution to the wind, looking for that franchise quarterback.
Yeah, you don't trade up to 3rd overall just to not take a guy that you're confident is going to lead your franchise to the brink of success, if not the Lombardi Trophy. And fortunately for San Francisco, who's in a bit of a quarterback crisis, they have found themselves in a draft class with 4 quarterbacks that will maybe, just maybe, go in the top 4, 3 quarterbacks that will definitely go in the top 3, and they are in the top 3, so good for them. And and I'll talk about it later, just which quarterback they're going to take.
And so really there's 5 first-round quarterbacks that everybody's looking at. You're looking at Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and of course Trevor Lawrence, who is all but locked up the #1 overall pick in this upcoming draft. So I want to get your takes on, each of those top 5 quarterbacks. First of all, looking at Trevor Lawrence, definitive #1 pick, looks like he's going to Jacksonville. What do you see out of Trevor Lawrence?
I see everything that the modern NFL quarterback should have, just incredible two-way ability. Two-way is in incredible ability to pass and also the ability to escape when needed and just run all the way. Trevor Lawrence, there isn't really much to say that's already been said. Led Clemson to a national championship game and a conference and a championship semifinal game, which both of times they didn't really come out the best. But either way, Trevor Lawrence, with not necessarily Alabama tier players to work with, has managed to put Clemson at the top, keep it where Deshaun Watson left off, and he's just showed everybody that he can do anything better than them and look better while doing it.
And the second pick in this year's draft belongs to the New York Jets. Now, the New York Jets, drafting Sam Darnold a few years back, have really been looking for that answer at quarterback. So where do you think the Jets go with #2?
I personally feel that the Jets, if they're smart, they go with Justin Fields out of Ohio State. Justin Fields had a monster 2019 season. Remember, he had 40-plus touchdowns. And even in this shortened year where he only played about 8 games, he was playing on pace for 38.5 touchdowns, which, funnily enough, eclipses Zach Wilson's totals from this year. And Justin Fields overall is more, again, as I said, a two-way threat than Zach Wilson. And as we saw in his pro day, Justin Fields can throw the deep ball too, which for whatever reason people were concerned about, even though it's clearly been shown that he can do just that on numerous occasions. So I don't know why Justin Fields all of a sudden is just dropping to 3rd best, sometimes even 4th best. But I feel like Justin Fields is more of a 2nd overall pick than some people realize.
I guess people are just afraid to take him because we've seen, the occasional Ohio State quarterback, go in the 1st round and just completely flop with the team. I'm looking at you, Dwayne Haskins. But looking at #3, you're looking at San Francisco, and they traded into the spot to take a face of their franchise. And your #3 quarterback right now is Zach Wilson. Tell me why.
Exactly. Zach Wilson's my #3 because, frankly, he was the #3 quarterback in the FBS this season. He was 3rd place in the FBS in passing yards and 3rd place in the FBS in passing touchdowns. And obviously that by no means discredits him at all. The FBS is obviously the top division, and he's thrown a lot more touchdowns there than you or I ever will. But either way, Zach Wilson on a team BYU with not the best weapons, again, not Alabama tier weapons, he's managed to put up those numbers, and Wilson can also run the ball. He's got 10 touchdowns for 254 yards on all of his carries this last season. So again, Wilson, very, very good. Will definitely be the quarterback for whoever he goes to for the next 5, 7, perhaps 10 years because of his skill set.
You talk about quarterbacks running the ball. We've specifically seen that over the past few years with the emergence of Lamar Jackson and really originally Russell Wilson. And a quarterback that can really run the ball in this draft is Trey Lance, and he's your #4 quarterback on the board. Could we see him go to Atlanta, or do you see him falling?
I don't want to say he falls because he does not deserve to fall. Trey Lance, the thing with him is that he's still a bit of a project, for lack of a better word. He has the skill set for sure. He can run the ball, and not really as you said, Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's more based on speed, whereas Trey Lance can just power through. There's a clip of him against UC Davis where it's only a red zone touchdown run, but he just ends a defender's career. He just trucks right over him, just makes him look miserable. So Trey Lance, he has the speed and he has the power, which I feel like not many other quarterbacks have. It kind of reminds me of prime Cam Newton, where he could just run the ball however often he wanted and however far he wanted. And Lance, the thing is, Atlanta will be the best place for him to go because they still have Matt Ryan. And Matt Ryan can teach him the things he needs to know about his throwing. Definitely not his running, though. Ryan's not really that type of quarterback. But either way, Trey Lance, if he gets a year behind a quarterback of Ryan's caliber, to learn and fix the minor problems he still has, then when he debuts, he might be better than some of the other quarterbacks that I've listed earlier.
And just a quick word on your final quarterback, which turns out to be the quarterback that won the national championship this year with the Alabama Crimson Tide, is Mac Jones. Just a short little piece on Mac Jones and where you think he might end up.
Mac Jones, I feel like he's Mr. 15th overall pick to the New England Patriots at this point. Mac Jones, he led the FBS in passing yards and was second in touchdowns only to Kyle Trask. But the thing is, though, is that I'm fairly hesitant on him because he's still going to be a great quarterback, but the thing is he's had weapons and an offense built around him. He's had Alex Leatherwood and Landon Dickerson as his O-linemen to give him just a little more time in the pocket than the other guys I've talked about. And then he's also gotten a bunch of really good wide receivers to work with. He's had Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, who conveniently are two of the best 3 receivers in this draft class. And you also have Najee Harris, who is a very good running back. Oh, and did I forget to mention, he played with Jerry Jeudy when Tua Tagovailoa was out for the year. So Mac Jones, he's going to be good, but I feel like teams should know that he is from an Alabama team that had all of the right pieces around him, so take that into account.
Should be very interesting coming late April with the NFL draft. We'll see where these quarterbacks go. Max, thank you for joining us here on 101 Sports.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Well, it is finally here. The weather's warming up. The birds are chirping. Spring is in bloom. And with that, baseball season is officially here. David Blake alongside Will Carroll. Will, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
So, Will, the big news just a couple of days ago, Francisco Lindor set his deadline for a deal on opening day. And right before that midnight mark, Uncle Steve Cohen, and Lindor reached a deal. 10 years, $360 million till 2032. What's your first reaction?
As a Mets fan, don't mix up the tie. As a Mets fan, I'm extremely excited, although also cautiously optimistic. I feel like we could have got a better deal. The Mets could have gotten a better deal on one of the other free agents, potential free agents next year, such as Seager, Correa, or even Trevor Story. While he's the best shortstop in the league, I do think we could have gotten a better deal or a shorter-term deal. I don't think we would have had to lock them up for 10 years in the free agency market.
So you would have rather taken a three-year, $100 million deal with Trevor Story over Francisco Lindor for the next decade?
I'm thinking more 6/180, 6/200 or so. So even though the AAV may be higher, I do think it'd be a better deal for the Mets because we still have to lock up Conforto, and there are more pieces that we do need other than just a shortstop.
All right, we'll agree to disagree there. And in 2032, the Mets will still be paying Bobby Bonilla. Let's go to your MVP favorites on the season. Your MVP favorite in the American League is someone who pretty much everyone knows is far and away going to win in Mike Trout. But the National League, a little more up for grabs. You have Juan Soto. What makes him your MVP over someone like Fernando Tatis Jr.?
Soto's just too good offensively. He's 22. Last year he was above the 90th percentile in hard hit rate, walks, and pretty much every offensive metric you want. And while he's not the best defensively, Tatis isn't excellent on defense either, so I think that's kind of a wash. And I think he's just too good, and in terms of most valuable, I think Soto is the most valuable to his team. Tatis has other players, an incredible starting pitching staff, and just in general, a better team than the Nationals. So I think if the Nationals can make the playoffs, I think in terms of whatever, he's more valuable to the team.
So you mentioned good starting pitching staffs. The Nats have just as good of a starting pitching staff as the Padres. You're talking Scherzer at the top, Strauss right behind him. So with that, where's the edge there? Because really, you look at it, Trout's the most valuable player in baseball. He's probably the most valuable player in the generation. But Juan Soto, on the other hand, yes, he's insanely good. But Fernando Tatis Jr. is the star of baseball, and rightfully so, with unbelievable stats. So let's throw out a hypothetical here. By the end of their career, who's going to end up being better, Soto or Tatis?
That's got to be Tatis. I think I'll agree with you there. Tatis, he has all the tools. He's faster. Soto's not slow, but he's also not quick like Tatis. And Tatis is just 5 tools all around, or could be, potentially.
And Tatis has that magical 6th tool, the beautiful, beautiful look. So let's go to Cy Young favorites. You're keeping it in New York. DeGrom and Cole, both of them are unbelievable. Jacob DeGrom is just unbelievable. What makes them stick out the most to you?
Well, you can't count out DeGrom any year. Even though he didn't win last year, he won the previous 2 years. And he's getting better each year. He's 31, 32 now. And he hit 100 consistently in spring training. other than Verlander and Scherzer, there really aren't that many pitchers that get better year after year, even as they age. And then Garrett Cole, he's just Garrett Cole. You really can't count him out. Although he didn't have a great 2020 campaign, or as good as they expected, I still think he'll be top of the line, best pitcher in the AL if Shane Bieber has an average year or a little above average.
And Shane Bieber is in the same situation as Jacob deGrom with 0 run support, no offense, and a front office who doesn't like to spend money ever in the entire history of the entire franchise. But let's go to the World Series favorites. Before we get there, let's get to the Rookie of the Year, because there's a guy in Seattle who you're quite familiar with as a Mets fan, and Jared Kelenic. You're picking him to win Rookie of the Year. The Mariners in the offseason, Kevin Mayer, who is the disgraced former front office man for the Mariners, said they offered him a long-term contract. He declined it, so they were going to bring him up later, manipulate that service time, but you think he'll still come up this year and take that Rookie of the Year spot in the American League?
I think if he doesn't make it up by May 1st, I do think it'll go to Madrigal on the White Sox, but I still think Kelenic will win it if he comes up. He's just too good offensively. He had 14 total bases and 6 hits, I believe, in spring training. So while it isn't the best stats on the surface, he didn't have that many at-bats or plate appearances. And he has the potential to be a 5-tool player as well. He's young. He's like 21. Drafted him out of high school 3 years ago. I think he runs away with it in the AL if he's up for at least the majority of the season. A good part of the season.
Now, there is a third name you haven't mentioned, though, and that is Bobby Witt Jr., the Kansas City Royals, who has been heralded as one of the top prospects, former top 2 pick a couple of years back. Will we see him in the bigs this year? Because that's the big thing. He mashed in spring training, but they're starting him in Omaha with the Storm Chasers in AAA to start the year. Do we see him come up, and when do we see him come up?
Well, the AAA season doesn't start until May 1st, I believe, so I do think they'll manipulate his service time, maybe get him a couple at-bats in AAA so that way it seems like they're not. And then I think he comes up definitely before the All-Star break if they have one this year, but at the very latest before the deadline. And the Royals aren't really in a position to win, so I think they want to try to manipulate his service time, keep his cost low. But I do think he comes up at very latest before the season ends, and I still think he'll be a stud too. I just don't think he'll get enough time.
Bobby Witt Jr. and the Omaha Storm Chasers playing in the brand new AAA West League that starts May 4th. But then you go to Pittsburgh and Ke'Bryan Hayes, who had a home run on opening day, and this guy is so special and someone the Pirates are looking for, at least in his ARB years, to really do a lot of fun stuff.
Oh yeah, he's a little on the older side. I believe he's 24, but last year was his rookie year technically, or one of his rookie years technically, and he had 2 WAR in something like 20 games, almost 10 home runs, I believe, and just in general, electric player. The future of Pittsburgh, if they're willing to open their pockets and surround them with talents, I think they could make a couple NLCS runs. I don't know about World Series. They got to surround them with more talent, though.
We talk about the Indians spending money. That's about as possible as the Pirates ever spending money. Unfortunately, Bob Nutting, pay your players. Come on. World Series favorites. Let's get to those. Your top 3, Dodgers, Yankees, Braves. What makes one of those 3 stand out to most of you to lift the Commissioner's Trophy at the end of the year?
Dodgers with depth. They won the World Series last year, obviously, and they got even better. Trevor Bauer, though he's not the greatest pitcher, I don't think he's the best in the NL. I do think he's like top 7 or so, and I do think he makes the team better. And I'm expecting a bounce-back year from Trinan and hopefully Kenley Jansen as well, as a fan of baseball. I do think they'll win, though. But the Yankees, you can't count them out. If they can stay healthy, they're going to win 100 games, even if they're not healthy. But I think they could come close to 105 or so. And then I think the Braves just have too much offense. And then with their pitchers coming back, I just think they'll be really good too.
And the Yankees, with all their depth, their big thing is going to be injuries. The Dodgers, with all their depth, their thing is going to be just how can they hold off the dads in San Diego as long as possible. Will, thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the next 6 months of baseball happiness. We'll be back right after this on 101 Sports.
Thanks for watching this episode of 101 Sports.
Make sure to follow us across all our social media channels, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at 101 Sports. And as always,
whose side are you on?